The afterlife really does exist. What happens when an experienced doctor, who has seen a great number of deaths in his life, suddenly crosses the boundary of physical life himself? Imagine his shocked state at that moment. After all, we know that doctors are, for the most part, hardened materialists. In today's video, I will tell an absolutely amazing and kind of unique story that happened to an experienced surgeon, Neal. This is the very real testimony that confirms that after our last breath, we will continue to exist in another form. Mary was born in 1955 on a small farm in Michigan. From her earliest childhood, she found special pleasure in communicating with nature. Mary, along with the neighborhood boys, went hiking, hunting, fishing, swimming, and skillfully operated a rowing and sailing boat. After graduating from high school, she decided to go to study at the University of Southern California, where she chose the Faculty of Medicine. During her residency in surgery, she met her future husband, Bill, who was already an experienced orthopedic surgeon. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved to the tourist resort of Jackson Hole in Wyoming. Their 4 children were born here. The whole family was actively involved in sports. Their hobbies included mountaineering, downhill skiing, hiking, and kayaking. In 1999, the couple went on another trip that changed Mary's life forever. Dr. Neal has written 2 books about her experiences on this journey, To Heaven and Back, and 7 Lessons from Heaven, How Death Taught Me to Live a Full Life. According to Mary, she really went to heaven and returned to earth. The couple decided to make their dream vacation come true. To go kayaking on the rivers in southern Chile, the Fuyi River was chosen as the destination. The waterfalls, about 7 meters high, were quite difficult to navigate, but Mary and Bill were experienced kayakers and felt confident on the water. The rest was really wonderful. The couple enjoyed the spectacular views, perfected their skills in kayaking, and practiced tipping the boat in the water. That day, Mary and Bill decided to go rafting along a stretch of the river known for its waterfalls. The height difference ranged from 4 to 6 meters, which is an exciting challenge for an experienced kayaker, but not a crazy idea. That morning, Bill woke up with terrible back pain, so he stayed in the hotel room, and Mary went rafting with her friends, the owners of a Chilean rafting and kayaking company that organized water trips. This is how Mary herself describes what happened in the book, To Heaven and Back. We started going down the river and overcame the first few small rapids. Everything was fine. We approached the first major threshold and stopped to discuss its passage. This river was very stormy, with a strong current, and consisted of several branches. There were no rocks or other obstacles in this section of the riverbed that could form slow-flowing areas where one could look around or regroup. Therefore, once in the stream, you could only move downstream. So we decided to go through a dangerous section along a smaller arm and set off on our way. Suddenly, another American tourist, completely inexperienced kayaker, swam past me. She lost an oar, and her boat just raced along the current until it got stuck among the rapids, blocking the safest passage that we had originally planned. The only option for me was to immediately turn around and go through the other arm. Otherwise, I would have just rammed her boat. When I reached the top of the waterfall, I saw a huge turbulent whirlpool below. I was scared by the sight, but I thought I could get out. I relied on all my previous experience and assumed that I would probably have to spend a couple of minutes underwater, but in the end, I would be able to get past the whirlpool and get out into calmer water downstream. Realizing all this, I dived down. But the front of my boat was stuck between underwater rocks that were not visible from above. The boat and I were completely submerged in water to a depth of 2 to 3 meters. As an experienced orthopedic surgeon accustomed to stressful situations, I tried not to panic. I tried to free the boat or get out of it, but the weight of the water and the force of the current literally pinned me to the front of the boat. I couldn't move. I knew that I would most likely drown, because the probability of rescue in such cases is almost 0. I've had a lot of experience with water tourism, and I've seen people die on the river. But I didn't panic. I am a very pragmatic person, so after thinking about it, I made a decision. Since I can't get out on my own or hope for help, I can only rely on providence and accept the inevitable. No, I didn't summon death, I just accepted it. At the same moment, I felt like I was in someone's kind and loving arms. They hugged me, comforted me, and assured me that everything would be fine. Regardless of whether I live or die, everything will be fine in the lives of my loved ones. For some reason, I immediately believed this feeling. I knew that I was supported by higher powers, and they were full of love. Mary desperately tried to lift her head above the water to breathe. After several unsuccessful attempts, she realized that there was no escape. She could feel her leg bones breaking and her muscles tearing under the weight of the water. But she was surprised by the lack of pain. All she felt was silence and peace. I was like a broken doll with no control over my body. Suddenly, there was a pop, as if a string had snapped, and I felt that my soul was rising freely and floating above the river. Mary began to pray with all her heart that everything would happen as God willed. At that very moment, she felt calm and supported by someone. She remembers not even trying to breathe. She was aware that she had been underwater for too long, but at the same time, she felt that she was alive at this moment like never before. Then Mary felt her soul rise high. Far below, she could see the river and her lifeless body. She had no desire to return to him. Suddenly, she felt like she was in her own home. It was amazing because her earthly life was wonderful, filled with love for her husband, children, and her beloved job. However, she didn't want to go back. Suddenly, several clusters of light appeared in the sky, which took the form of people. They were wrapped in thin, fluttering, sparkling robes, shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. These glowing creatures greeted Mary joyfully. She became firmly convinced that they had known and loved her for a long time. In response, she felt a deep sympathy for them. Here's what she remembers about that amazing encounter. These creatures led me through a magnificent field of flowers to a huge luminous dome, which seemed to me like a gateway between the earthly and heavenly worlds. But right on the threshold, they stopped, looked at me with deep sadness, and explained that, despite their joy at meeting, I had to return to the earthly world because I still had important tasks to complete. They didn't say a word. It was like telepathy, when you look at each other and understand everything without words. I was informed that my eldest son was going to die, but they didn't tell me when or how. I will have to become a spiritual support for the family when this happens. I was also assigned to tell people all over the world about what happened to me beyond the threshold of death, so that they could develop their spiritual side. While Mary was traveling through the afterlife and did not want to return to the earthly world, her hiking companions managed to extract her swollen body from under the water and desperately tried to revive her. From time to time, she took a deep breath, and the rescuers did not understand whether it was a return to life or the last breath of air before death. After 15 minutes of continuous artificial respiration, Mary opened her eyes and began to breathe on her own. She was taken by helicopter to a local hospital. The hospital diagnosed numerous fractures and ruptures of the ligaments of both legs, pneumonia, and poor respiratory activity. Surprisingly, the brain, which did not receive oxygen underwater for 15 minutes and then was not supplied with blood during intensive care for the same amount, was completely unharmed. After several surgeries and long months of rehabilitation, Mary was able to get back on her feet and even return to playing sports again. Dr. Mary Neal was trying to find a scientific explanation for what happened to her during her clinical death. She read many books and articles on the subject and talked with emergency room doctors, trying to understand the physiology of the dying brain. She desperately wanted to prove that what she saw was just an illusion. After all, if these are just hallucinations caused by lack of oxygen, then the prophecy of her son's death will not come true. However, in the end, Mary came to the conclusion that trying to explain everything by scientific methods is a futile effort. It took Mary 10 years to process and understand what had happened to her. One day at 3 o'clock in the morning, she woke up with a deep inner feeling that it was time to write a book that would describe her journey through the afterlife. That's how work began on the first book, To Heaven and Back. She wrote easily and quickly. On the day I made the last corrections to the finished manuscript, the phone rang. The policeman reported that her eldest son had died in a car accident. He was 19 years old. Here's what Mary writes about this time in her next book, 7 Lessons from Heaven. How Death Taught Me to Live Life to the Fullest. When I was working on the first book, I relived my near-death experience, and it really helped me become a reliable support for my family during that terrible time when my son died. The driver who hit him was distracted by his mobile phone and wasn't watching the road. I miss my son every day and would give anything for him to come back. However, I understand that his departure was part of a divine plan. That is why I do not blame the driver and do not invoke heavenly punishments on him. I pray for him so that he can forgive himself and learn from what happened for spiritual growth. I've changed a lot since that fateful day. Now I believe in the existence of the afterlife, and I know that death is not the end of our existence. I try to love others, sympathize with their troubles, and help them as much as I can. Mary says that she returned to this world to tell people about boundless love. And if we accept it, it can change everything. Our worldview, feelings, and perception of life. Now I am sure that our spiritual life is eternal, says Dr. Mary Neal, and that there is a wonderful plan for each of us, that there is love and beauty in everything in this world, even if they are hidden. And if we let them into our hearts, we can face difficulties with gratitude, courage, and confidence that everything is going according to plan. Write in the comments if you have known Mary Neal before and if you have read her books. Do you believe in life after death? Recently, some interesting videos were released on my channel. I strongly advise you to watch them. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it. See you soon.